Karoline Leavitt just painted a picture in Jerome Powell's mind that he won't be able to shake anytime soon. Let me walk you through it. Next voice. Today, the president passed a note to the Fed chair, adding more weight to the Trump team's push to cut interest rates. Karoline came prepared, but barely a day later, Powell fired back, taking a direct shot at Trump's tariffs.
Chair, would the Fed have cut more by now if it weren't for the tariffs?
So I think that's right. In effect, we went on hold when we saw the size.
That's why we're breaking this all down today. Not to cheerlead for one side or the other, but to lay out the facts with a dose of common sense. If you're the type who likes to think for yourself, hit that subscribe button and let's get into it.
It has consistently stated the American economy is booming, and there were so many economic analysts who said that this president's policies would drive our economy down, when in fact we have seen the opposite. We've seen a massive deregulation campaign take place. We've seen inflation completely diminished from where it was under the reckless spending and the bad policies of the previous incompetent administration. I would remind the Fed chair, and I would remind the entire world, that this is a president who was a businessman first, and he knows what he is doing. He has a proven economic formula that worked in his first term as president, and it is working again. The one problem that remains is high interest rates for the American people. The American people want to borrow money cheaply, and they should be able to do that.
Other than immigration, the economy has been one of Trump's biggest talking points. Yes, his tariff battles gave Wall Street a few ups and downs, but when you actually look at the numbers, the media's panic often sounds more like hype than disaster. Here's a clear example. Just a few days ago, the New York Fed released a report saying, short-term inflation expectations are moving down, medium and long-term expectations are steady, job loss concerns are falling, spending is dipping a little, but household income expectations are rising. Those are strong numbers, and they don't match the everything's falling apart headlines we keep hearing. And let's be honest, if Biden had numbers like that, the mainstream press would be celebrating nonstop. That's exactly why Karoline came in with a chart, like a teacher catching Powell without his homework.
Fortunately, we have interest rates that are still too high, so the president sent this note to the Fed chair today. And if you look at this chart, this is a chart of all of the interest rates of many countries throughout the world are all paying lower interest rates than the United States of America, which has one of the hottest and strongest economies in the world. The president sent this note to the Fed chair. It says, Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost, and there is no inflation. And the president is right. There is historically low inflation thanks to his policies. And we will continue to drive down the cost of living in this country for Americans. We will continue to
Here's the bottom line on the push to cut rates. Cheaper loans for everyone, which could give the economy a quick boost. But here's the risk. If they cut too soon, inflation could come back stronger, like a sequel nobody asked for. That back and forth was front and center at the Fed's last meeting. Sure, most officials agreed rate cuts were on the table, but they said, let's wait and watch a little longer. Powell even repeated that message overseas at the European Central Bank's Forum in Portugal, telling everyone not to expect quick moves.
The economy is in a pretty good position. Inflation has come down close to 2%. We're at 2.3 headline, 2.7 core.
Chair, would the Fed have cut more by now if it weren't for the tariffs?
So I think that's right. In effect, we went on hold when we saw the size of the tariffs and essentially all inflation forecasts for the United States went up materially as a consequence of the tariffs. So we didn't overreact. In fact, we didn't react at all. We're simply taking some time. As long as the U.S. economy is in solid shape, we think the prudent thing to do is to wait and learn more and see what those effects might be. And again, they haven't really shown up. So we're...
Fair enough. But here's the twist. Even the countries taking the hardest hits from Trump's tariffs have been cutting rates. CNN reported that the European Central Bank, the Bank of Mexico, and others have all trimmed their benchmark rates. Meanwhile, the Fed is still holding back. So while other economies loosen up to stay competitive and avoid lowdowns, the US is sitting on the sidelines. Which raises the real question. Is this smart caution, or just political theater dressed up as careful policymaking? That's where Karoline doubled down.
Outlined Jerome Powell and the note that the president just sent to him. There are many who believe that Powell has been politicized in a lot of different ways. The president has not been shy about acting on things that he believes in. Why not just fire Jerome Powell and put in somebody that is going to lower rates? Why wait?
Well, it's a good question and one you can ask the president because that's a decision for him to make. But you're right to point out the politicization of the Fed, and it's very unfortunate for our country. But Jerome Powell cut rates numerous times ahead of the election when Joe Biden was in this Oval Office, but now he refuses to, and the economy is in a much better place. So there really isn't a good explanation for that, and the president is rightfully calling attention to it.
Now, the Fed is supposed to be an independent referee for the economy. But some people saw Powell's comments on tariffs as more political than neutral. And it's not the first time the Fed has blurred that line. Back in 2020, they rewrote their mission statement, shifting focus from inflation first to jobs first, with a lot of inclusive language added. Powell even admitted that racial gaps in unemployment influenced that move. But here's the issue: monetary policy should be about growing the economy for everyone, not about scoring points with activism or political messaging. Trump hasn't missed that point. He's been ramping up criticism of Powell, even going so far as to publicly call for his resignation.
Jerome Powell, who you've been pressuring to lower interest rates, he's facing accusations of lying to Congress, which is a potential crime about the opulent.
Well, then he should resign immediately. We should get somebody in there that's going to lower interest rates.
Do you want congressional
Why don't
Republicans
you call for his resignation?
Do you want congressional Republicans to investigate and pursue?
It's okay with me. I think he's terrible. I think, look, we're paying, I call him Too Late. T-O-O, Too Late, like Too Tall Jones for the Dallas Cowboys, right? Too late. He's always late. But he wasn't late with Biden before the election. He was cutting him like crazy. It didn't help too much, did it? But he was cutting him like crazy before the election with
This isn't the first time Powell has been under pressure. Back in 2019, Trump's frustration with him was at an all-time high. There were constant rumors about Powell's job security. When Powell was asked directly if he'd resign if Trump demanded it, his answer was short and clear: no.
The president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
Here's why today's comments matter so much. First, they sound like a push, or even a shove, for an independent Fed to follow the president's playbook, whether they agree or not. Second, the Supreme Court already ruled back in May that Trump can't just fire Powell without cause. That's why some analysts think the administration may be setting the stage for something else, either finding a legal loophole to push Powell out, or cranking up the pressure until he quits. So what do you think? Is this a serious chess match over the economy, or just another round of political theater with better production value?